Hello, my name is Susan and welcome back to my channel. I've got Winston here. I don't know if he's in frame, but I'm hoping he'll stay on my lap and stay quiet for the duration of my recording. I wanted to film my maker bucket list today. Now these are the items that as a sewer and a knitter, I one day really hope to create. A couple of them would be what I would kind of consider like magnum opus projects. I'm going to have the video kind of divided in two. I'm going to start with knitting and then go on to my sewing ones. In the knitting category, I'm going to start with kind of what inspired me to even take up knitting in the first place, and after that go in order of difficulty. Now this is definitely perceived difficulty. I am a new knitter. I don't know what I don't know. So maybe what I think is going to be extremely difficult is not going to be as bad as I think it will be. And maybe something I think won't be that difficult is going to have me banging my head against the wall. But sewing is kind of in no particular order, though I am definitely ending with the magnum opus, which I understand as someone who has been sewing for over 30 years is an incredibly difficult task. But without further ado, let's get into it. We're going to start with the knitting. And apologize if I'm looking down into the side, it's where I've got my notes. So starting off with knitting is the sweater that inspired me to take up knitting in the first place. Now I didn't really actively start knitting until I moved a few months ago, but I kind of got the idea of wanting to do it a few years ago, and I even bought some really inexpensive needles and yarn from a creative reuse store in the Bay Area called Fabmo, and had started teaching myself kind of knits and purls, a little bit of texture, but I didn't undertake any project. Then my husband and I watched the movie Oddity, which is a 2024 Irish horror movie. It's unusual, but if you're a fan of horror, I would definitely recommend it. Now, from the movie, what inspired me to knit was the red cable sweater that the wife, played by Carolyn Bracken, wears in the opening sequence. It's this red all over knit cable sweater. I will insert photos, of course. Unfortunately, the beginning of the movie is very dark. I will try to adjust the photos so it's easier to see. You definitely see more in the movie, but I'm kind of relying on stills here. I think it's a very traditional Aran sweater, if I'm using the term correctly. If anybody has any pattern recommendations for this, please do leave them in the comments. I'm particularly interested in the cable motif in the middle. It looks like a honeycomb motif, but it looks a lot smaller than any I've seen. So if you know if it's a different name of a cable pattern, if it's a different cable name, or if it's a larger size, any details on helping me recreate this in the long run would be greatly appreciated. So the sweater in Oddity was really the first thing that primed me of like, yeah, I want to take up knitting. And not too long after seeing that movie, my husband and I went to the De Young Museum to see an exhibit on Tomato and Pizka, and my apologies if that pronunciation is not correct. I did try to look it up. Now, she is a Polish-born artist that was a real big pioneer in the Art Deco movement and worked mainly in France and the US. So the specific piece of the collection that inspired me in terms of knitting was her piece called St. Moritz, which was painted in 1929, and it is believed to be a portrait of her close friend and lover, Ira Perot. And it's this beautiful red base sweater with this very thick folded over white collar, very extended white cuffs, and I really feel like it is something that could be made from a pattern that already exists, just changing up the colors. But again, if you know any pattern recommendations for it, I definitely want something fitted like it's kind of shown in the painting. The third thing on my knitting bucket list is a grandpa cardigan. I don't know what else to call it. I certainly don't mean it as any kind of derogatory term. I take a lot of style inspiration from elderly British gentlemen specifically.
I'll wear your granddad's clothes.
I think some of the pieces are just so classic, but specifically what I mean in this case for Grandpa cardigan is the all-over cable cardigan with a shawl collar. Glenn Howerton's character in AP Bio wears a lot of them, and it was, my husband and I were watching, it was kind of like this reminder of like, I would really, really love one of those in my wardrobe. I really have no idea what color I would want, probably a neutral. For some reason, I want everything but the oddity cabled sweater to be a white cabled sweater, but like how many white cabled sweaters do I need in my wardrobe? So something neutral, maybe not white. I have a few patterns in mind for this, but I'm not by any means ready to undertake this project, so I haven't purchased anything. The first pattern is the Ashby cardigan by William Howe. The second is Porter by Megan Babin. And the third one is the Sulu cardigan by Ronya Hakaletto. This one particularly appeals to me because not only do I actually really like the design, it's also a free pattern, so I think that could be the front runner. But there's so many patterns to still look through. There's so many patterns yet to be released. When I'm ready to take on this project, who knows what will be available, but you will hear about it when it does happen. The fourth thing under my knitting bucket list is the sheep sweater by Rosa Pomar. This is a bottom-up fingering weight all over colorwork sweater that has this beautiful sheep motif, and I feel like it really celebrates not just knitting but sheep in general and what they have continue to contribute to our society. Sheep provide us with many things, whether it is meat, skins, or with us in the knitting community as well as us in the sewing community, wool for yarns. And I think that this sweater really seems like it is an homage to an animal that really brings the community together. So in that similar vein, I would want to knit it in undyed yarns. I would really love to do a brown base and a white, off-white cream for the sheep. So if you have any recommendations for fingering weight undyed yarns available in Europe or in the UK, I would really appreciate it. The fifth thing on my knitting bucket list is a Fair Isle sweater. These are sweaters I've admired since childhood, going back to taking a lot of wardrobe cues from older British gentlemen. This very much falls in that. I do not have a specific pattern in mind. At the moment, I know Marie Wallen is a huge maker in that space, and she has so many beautiful patterns, it would be difficult to choose. In my great fantasy of making a Fair Isle sweater, I would be able to visit Fair Isle and buy the wool there, buy the pattern there. One of the things that really intimidates me about Fair Isle, not addressing the construction of Fair Isle, which I have no idea how to do at this point. One of the big things that stresses me out about Fair Isle is choosing the colors. I've heard there's some really good books out there for that, but I think I'm a long way from really being able to even take on this project. So hopefully I can get a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more knowledgeable before I dive in. Finally, what I would consider the magnum opus on this list, and again, that is on perceived difficulty, not really an understanding of the difficulty, would be to take the Salon capelet from Ginny Williams and Archipelago Knitting and turn it into a sweater. So when Lina Publishing was teasing this magazine, I fell in love with the picture I'll put on the screen. The neckline is gorgeous, perfect, the little cables, all over pattern is beautiful, the colors are perfect, and I remember thinking, I cannot wait to knit this sweater, even though I'm like insanely not ready to take on a color work project that I think has 4 colors in it, and cables, and a sweater, and I was just ready. I'm like, this sweater, I want it. I'm getting this magazine because I will be making this sweater. And the magazine came out and it was a capelet. And there's nothing wrong with capelets. I don't hate on capelets. I just don't see a place for them in my wardrobe. So I kind of was sitting and thinking, do I still want this magazine, knowing that this is not a sweater pattern? And it really came down to the fundamentals of it are so perfect. I would make it a journey to figure out how to turn it from a capelet into a sweater. I don't know if there's already good resources out there for figuring that out. I imagine I know that there's going to have to be maths with the repeats and figuring that out. But if you have any suggestions, any knowledge, even like project notes from an entirely different project on how you did it, I would love to know about it, because it's a beautiful capelet and it's going to be a beautiful sweater when I am one day ready to make it. So now let's get into my sewing bucket list. This is where I have considerably more experience in talking about these things and executing these things. And it's something that I've been in love with for a long time. So I've also kind of been collecting ideas for longer. But the first thing that I've got listed is to make a Savile Row suit. Now that's specifically out of Patrick Grant's The Savile Row Suit, The Art of Bespoke Tailoring. I am obsessed with the Great British Sewing Bee. Patrick Grant is amazing. I've mentioned multiple times this video already. Love the British grandpa like style. So I think making a Savile Row suit would be a really great way to start. And not only would it be an amazing learning experience for me, it would also be an amazing thing that I could put in my portfolio, as I do want to get into bespoke suiting professionally. I don't have any fabrics in mind for this immediately. I'm hoping to film a fabric stash tour soon, but I don't really see any of them quite working into that. The book does come with a pattern for the jacket and pants and the shirt. It is one size, but I do think I would be able to either manipulate the pattern to fit me or to draft from my sloper to match the pattern. But that is the first thing that's on the list. The second thing is a double-faced wool coat. Finally living in a climate where I could actually really use one, and I've just always admired the beauty and the finishings that go into a double-faced wool coat. Now, if you don't know double-faced wool, there's a couple types. It's wool that literally has two stacks on top of each other. Now, when you want to do a double-faced wool properly with hiding the seams on the inside, you need a splittable double-faced wool. But there are also ones that are glued together. So specifically, if you're ever going to undertake this project, you need to look for a splittable one. And using this allows you to make a truly reversible coat where you don't see the seams of the other color on the inside. I really want to undertake this project to understand the finishing of these items. I think they're fascinating. I don't understand how the engineering works, and they're of course a very classic look. I know that the pattern line occasionally offers a virtual course on making a double-faced jacket, but that's not currently in the budget for me, but I'm hoping one day it will be, or I will be able to figure out how to do it on my own. The third thing on my sewing bucket list is to create a fully beaded evening wear skirt. Now, I grew up watching the Oscars. I was always really into red carpet fashion, and I remember Sharon Stone in 1998 wearing a white button-down shirt from The Gap with a Valentino skirt, and I was instantly in love with that look. I love a white button-down. If I were to pull a Steve Jobs one day and decide to only wear one outfit ever, it would be a white button-down and wide leg pants. So I love this mix of this typically kind of masculine looking shirt with this beautiful skirt. Zendaya did a nod to it at the 2022 Oscars wearing all Valentino, and then most recently I was particularly inspired by Anne Hathaway's look at the Met Gala, which is this gorgeous Carolina Herrera outfit with the white button down and the fully beaded striped skirt. The whole look being a nod to Andre Leon Talley, who was close friends with Carolina Herrera. Now, I actually do have a fabric I'm thinking about using for this. I got it for free at my school off the free shelf. So it is actually, I'm pretty sure it's an upholstery fabric, and it has the black flocked floral with these multicolored stripes underneath it. What I'm thinking of doing is basically going along the edge and doing bugle beads or seed beads, or alternating on either side of each of the different colors of stripes. So that's one idea. The other idea would be to just do all of the white stripes, and another would be to do all of it, which would be an incredible labor of love, but I think it could be really, really fun. I don't know if I would do horizontal, vertical, or maybe something on the bias. Because it is an upholstery fabric, I'm not really worried. It's very reinforced, so I'm not worried about it stretching out on the bias. The next bucket list item I also have fabric for. It was also from the free shelf at my school back in California, and it is to make a Vivienne Westwood style draped corset. She is one of my favorite designers. I've always loved her use of color, and I've always really enjoyed the mix of the draping and the structure that really underlines so many of her designs. So I have this beautiful silk tartan-esque fabric. I don't have a ton of it. There should be enough to make a corset. But I know how to make a corset. I'm pretty sure I could draft one from my moulage, but I'm not very good at draping. I don't feel very comfortable draping, and I'm not exactly sure how they're even engineered together. I'm guessing there's some, like, it's all hand stitched. So it would be really flexing a lot of muscles that I don't have to get it done, but I have the fabric and I am determined to one day do it. The second to last thing on my list is an organza blazer. I've worked with organza before. I actually enjoy working with it, but the real difficulty I see in making an organza blazer is that it's completely see-through, so everything has to be finished perfectly. Any imperfections will be seen. I was specifically inspired by a Max Mara design for this. I would want to, I think, do something that is single button instead of the double breasted. Of course, I will put in pictures. And another one that I think is gorgeous, and it's not technically a blazer, but I just want to highlight it because this is my channel and I can, is this beautiful jacket worn by Katharine Hepburn in the movie A Philadelphia Story from 1940 by the costume designer Adrian. So I think these are just beautiful, chic. I think they could be layered over a turtleneck as easily as they could be layered over a slip dress. And I think it would just be a fun and interesting piece, and I think there would be a lot of joy in the process of finishing a garment and knowing that you've kept it to such high standards. And the final thing on my maker bucket list that I'm going to talk about today, and it's this beautiful piece John Galliano for his last collection for Maison Margiela, which was the spring 2024 Haute Couture collection. This is my absolute wildest dreams project, and we need to zoom in on the details to do it. So I am showing the look of the runway right now, but I want to specifically look at Greta Gerwig wearing it in Cannes. So if you zoom up to it, the color change is based on individual pleating, and from each pattern piece of this highly complex custom made garment, it is pleated and then flared out and pattern matched into the next piece. This is just an exquisite level of design and taste and execution. And like I said, this is a wildest dreams project. Not only would I have to get much more comfortable with draping and pattern making, I would need a mannequin that would fit me perfectly. I would have to make the entire understructure, and then everything would probably be at least initially hand sewn before being sewn down on a machine. The one thing I would omit from my final design would just be the flap on the shoulder, but that's just a wearability thing for my day-to-day life. This probably will never happen, but like I said, wildest dreams. I hope you enjoyed hearing me talk about my bucket list items. I know I really enjoy talking about them, thinking about them, and hopefully it gives you a little insight into kind of what's inspired me over the years, as well as what my tastes are and what you can hopefully expect going forward. thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend with me, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.